Well, welcome everybody. We're at the top of the hour, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And it looks like a couple of people will be almost with us. They just are still working on their audio. So this is the VistA orientation. And first of all, I'd like to share with you the names of the people who are here from the Bellevue side today. Just as in the movies, in order of appearance. And we are particularly happy to have with us today Pam Pickett, who is a recently retired VA nurse informaticist, and she has been a godsend for us in terms of finding our way around VistA. And it would be great to hear from all of you. If you could chat in the chat pane, what college, what institution you're with, and what you're teaching. That would be terrific. And if you're not seeing a chat pane, look in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. You'll see some icons, and one of them is a chat. If you just click on that, then you should be able to see a chat window. Okay, Heidi. Heidi is from Clark College, and she teaches in the Farm Tech program. And when you chat in your message, if you could be sure to click on Send to Everyone. Okay, and Rob's the PM from Spokane Community College. And welcome, Natasha. I see you just got audio.
Yes, thank you.
Anybody else? Lynette, who is with you? Ah, here we go. She just had more to type. So from Bellingham, Lori Nichols, Health IT, Cindy Hollingsworth and Holly Kennedy. Hello, ladies. From Nursing, and Erica Gaffey, Student Navigator. Oh, and Fernando Morado, also in Nursing at Bellingham Tech. All right. Well, terrific. So just a few bullet points on VistA. It's an open source system that was created by the VA. It's been in use for many, many years. It's focused primarily on inpatient care, and it is a Microsoft Windows-based versus browser-based system. There are 2 server configurations, and I'll let you read those. Any questions on that? All right. We added that in because I know we might have a couple of IT faculty who would want to know that. We're also working on curriculum. The focus is primarily on nursing curriculum, but we also have some pharmacy-related materials. You can expect about 3 to 5 hours of instructional material, and we will get those to you by mid-October, and they will have exercises and assessment questions. Also, in November, we'll have completed an importable Canvas module with all of those instructional elements so that students can work through them on a self-paced basis, and you can integrate it directly into your institution's Canvas system. In addition, many of you probably received this morning from me some what we're calling cognitive aids created by Pam Pickett to help you and your students figure out how to access various features and functions. And our goals today, one is simply how to access VistA. The other is to show you how to access selected features and functions, and the other is to answer questions. So I am going to turn things over to Pam Pickett now, who will give you a guided tour of VistA. Let's see. All right, Pam, it's all yours.
Okay, great. Thank you, Margaret. Can folks see my desktop that has several icons on the left-hand side?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. Okay. Well, hello, everyone. It's really a pleasure for me to be on this call today to provide an overview of the VistA CPRS record and some of the complementary software packages that have been developed to go along with CPRS and VistA. This is really, I just lost connection here, Margaret. Shoot. I don't know why I just, am I still sharing?
Yes.
Okay, then I lost connection to the remote desktop, so I'm just trying to get back.
This will show the login process.
Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, so let's try this again. Can everyone see the blue screen with the icons on the left?
Yep.
Okay. I think I might have left my remote desktop open too long, Roger. I had it all set and ready to go. So that's
it may have timed out.
So to get back to the task at hand, I'm going to give an overview of some of the information. It really is a lot to cover in an hour, and I certainly understand that. So feel free to stop me and ask any questions, or Margaret will have the chat open so you can send some questions and we can address those either on the call, or I'm happy to do a frequently asked questions document as well. But feel free to stop me at any time. Like Margaret said, I retired from the VA, so I grew up, so to speak, on CPRS and VistA. And if I don't take my time in explaining things, please feel free to chime in. So the first thing that I'm going to go over is how to access all of these different different icons. You will receive access and verify codes from Roger as far as getting into the desktop and then getting into the various applications that you see on the left-hand side of the screen. We are not going to cover all of these applications. There are several that won't even really be used by you folks at all. So the key takeaway with this is the access and verify code that you and the students receive will be the same regardless of the application that you go through and enter. You will also receive an electronic signature code with each access and verify code, and those are used primarily for signing progress notes. They're user specific, so they come up with the signature of that particular user. The first application that I'm going to do a brief overview of is something called the Shift Handoff tool, and you can see I'm kind of circling it on the desktop here. And this was something that was designed to enhance the handoff process during end-of-shift report. It's used a lot by physicians as well as nurses as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is I double-clicked on the icon, and I'm going to click in the box that says access code and enter the access code that I've been given. And then I will click in the verify code box or push the tab key. There's all sorts of little shortcuts. And then just click on OK. Okay. So what comes up is the patient selection screen, and in the Shift Handoff tool as well as in CPRS and some of the other applications, there's several different ways to select patients. You can, folks could set up a default patient list. I believe the easiest way for you and students to access would be to click on ward. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to select a ward named 1 East because that's where the patients are that we've populated many of the records. You can see on the right-hand side the list of 5 patients that are currently inpatients on 1 East. I could have the option now of selecting any one of those patients, but I'm going to click Submit, and it's going to bring up the Shift Handoff tool for all of the patients. And you can see here what's highlighted in blue is Mr. Adams, Thomas Robert Adams, and he's the patient whose Shift Handoff tool we've brought up. Many of the fields in this handoff tool import information from CPRS and VistA. You can see the patient's name, where they're located, what team they're on or what service, what their Social Security number is, because in the VA system is set up that the unique medical record identifier is Social Security number. You can also see as we move across the patient's name, one thing that is imported in is code status, but you can see here that most of the patients have code status not found. I would stress that with a student that because there is no code status found, it does not mean it's even been addressed. So that's a little bit of a gray area as far as the code status goes. The fields that you see in yellow are fields that users are able to edit. And what I could do here is I could jot in any note similar to a Cardex of what perhaps I wanted to make sure the next shift or the next few shifts were aware of. So I may say here, you can see I've populated a little bit there. I might say that to ambulate the patient twice a day. Oops, and it doesn't have spell check automatically. So this is information that I may want to pass on to the other shift or just make sure that I'm aware of as far as the task goes. I could also enter any information in the covering physician, what team the patient might be on if this was a teaching hospital. The other areas here, the medication area you can see is blank. This patient has medications ordered by the physician, but they've not yet had the step by pharmacy to be verified and activated, so they're not showing up as active medications in this list. Allergies and lab tests are also items that will show up here as well. So for the workflow of a nurse, a lot of times a nurse does like to have still a piece of paper to kind of go by as a little cheat sheet or their task list. And this application has the ability to print. So I'm going to say I'm going to print a report. And for purposes right now, I'm just going to say print a preview. And you can see here, this is what would come up. And a nurse or a student may want to print this out. You can see the tasks that I had entered in here show up. And there's also medications. And again, it's a high-level snapshot view of some of the information that a nurse would want to have to kind of start their day and also what they may want to pass on to the next shift. There is a cognitive aid that I developed going through all these different steps, so hopefully you'll be able to replicate them when you get into CPRS into the systems. So with that, I'm going to stop, see if there's any questions in reference to the shift handoff tool. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to exit this particular system, and I'm just going to click in the X, just like any Windows-based system. I'm going to click in the X in the upper right-hand corner. That brings me out of the print option, and then I will again click the X in the upper right-hand corner or go to File and select Exit. And I'll just keep doing that. Now I'm completely out of the system. The next application, so to speak, that we're going to review is CPRS, and you can see the icon is called TMG-CPRS. It's a little notebook. This is really where this is the medical record. The other pieces that we're going to show are adjunct pieces of the medical record that will interact and interface with CPRS, but CPRS is really the core of everything. So I'm going to, again, double-click on the icon. Same sign-in screen will come up and ask for the Access and Verify code. It's going to be the same Access and Verify code I previously entered. The first thing that comes up is the patient selection screen. And there's several different ways to access a patient's record in CPRS, VistA, and any of the adjunct applications. The easiest way, again, that I believe that the students will easily recognize is to go by ward, and I would select 1 East. It again brings up those same 5 patients we previously saw in the shift handoff tool, and we could select any of those patients. Another way to select a patient is by entering the first letter of their last name and the last 4 of their Social Security number. So I happen to know that Mr. Adams would be A 1118, and it brings up 2 different patients that have that their first name begins with A and the last 4 of their social or medical record ID is 1118. And we would just click and select Mr. Adams. And again, it tells you that he's a patient on 1 East. And to access his record, I would click OK. Before doing that, I do want to point out a button where you could add a patient to the system. And I know this will be one of the exercises that students will be asked to do, is to add a brand new patient to the system. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit and show you how to do that. Would click on Add Patient, and it brings up a dialog box to ask for the patient's name. So I'm going to enter in the last name of Smith. Just tab down into the first name, and I'll put Sam. And you can see here the bold areas are the areas that are required fields. The middle name is not required. The date of birth is. So I'm going to say that his date of birth is 4/7/5, and his Social Security number, again, this is all made up. And I'm going to say OK. And it says, do I want to add him as a new patient? And I'll say yes. And now I could go to the demographic screen and add new information, which I'm not going to do for demonstration purposes. But you can see I've just added a new patient. So again, this will be a student exercise that will be done, and they will then enter information on their particular patients. So I'm going to get back to Mr. Adams and click OK. And this brings up what we refer to as the cover sheet of CPRS. And you can see along the bottom, there's various tabs that really kind of mimic a paper record, the old paper records, where there's problems, medications, orders, and we will be going into those in a little bit more detail as we navigate through the record. But for demonstration purposes, you can see here that the cover sheet really gives a high-level overview of some of the pertinent information that's contained within the record. So the first thing I'm going to show you is the patient demographics, and you can see I'm hovering my mouse over the patient's name. I'm just going to click once, and it brings up a demographic screen that gives information related to the patient's address, their next of kin, when they were admitted to the hospital. You can see he's been in for about 3.5 years now, and what their insurance information might be, and their emergency contact information. And again, a user would be able to print this out if they desired, or edit the demographics from this screen as well. So I'm just going to close out of that. Again, there's a couple ways to do it. I can click the X in the upper right-hand corner or just select Close. And what I'm going to do, and most of this information is contained in that guide that you all received from Margaret, I'm just going to work my way kind of through the cover sheet, and we're going to get into a little bit more detail in each tab. So you can see this patient is currently an inpatient on 1 East. Their attending physician is someone by the name of Coordinator 1. And as I move along the top here in the right-hand corner, you can see there's something called postings. And postings are progress notes that you really want, they have a certain title associated with them that you want the user who may be accessing the record to key in on that information. It's very important information. And in this upper right-hand corner, you may see the initials, the letters C, W, A, or D. And you can see here, I can click on this, and it will show that the patient postings. I'm going to close out of that. But also here, right below that, it indicates to the user what the postings are. So a note that begins with C is a crisis note. A lot of times those are used, and those are the use of those are defined usually at the local level. But a crisis note might be the patient has a history of suicidal attempts or something like that. A W note is a clinical warning, often used to say a patient needs to be in a private room. An A is an allergy note, and a D is an advanced directive note. And again, I can click on the phrase crisis note, and I can see here what that note actually is. The content of these are also included in the Progress Notes tab as well. So moving along the cover sheet, you can see in, the active problems. Again, we'll go into a little bit more detail of that in the Problems tab, but again, it's a quick look, quick view. You can see allergies and adverse drug reactions here. If I wanted to enter a new allergy from this point, I could. I would do that by just double-clicking on any one of the entries here. It would show what the reaction is, whether it was verified by a pharmacist or not, and then I could click in the lower left-hand corner how to add a new allergy. And I'll just quickly show you that. It brings up a clinical lexicon to search for the drug. I'll just say DIG for digoxin. And then I would just choose that, and it would bring up a screen for me to enter in what kind of allergy it was. And again, I can hover over whether it was actually observed by the healthcare provider or historical, what the reaction was, the various signs and symptoms, and any comments here. So I'm not going to enter this as an allergy. I'm just going to cancel out of this. And again, I think that's key for any students using the system. If they go to enter something and they're not sure, you know, they've made a mistake, they usually have the option to cancel out of any option that they're in. I'm going to just pause for a second and just do a check. Am I going too fast, too slow, too overwhelming? Any questions?
And I've muted most of your lines just to reduce background noise. So if you'd like to take yourself off mute, right next to your name, you'll see a little microphone icon. Just click on it, or you can chat in the chat pane.
I'll just keep motoring through then.
All right, thanks, Pam.
Sure. So in the middle of this screen is a listing of active medications. And you can see, you'll be able to see when we go into the medication tab, there's a lot more information there. But the system knows Mr. Adams is an inpatient on 1 East, so I'm going to show you his active inpatient medications. If I wanted to look at any one of these and say, well, who prescribed that, who wrote the order, I would just double-click on any of these entries. And again, similar to the demographic screen that we clicked on, you can see who entered it, who electronically signed the medication order, and what the current status is. And previously I had indicated in the shift handoff tool that there were no medications listed because they were all pending. And that means pharmacy has not yet done their piece to activate the order. Close out of that. Clinical reminders is something that will come up. It's programmed into the system to perhaps have everyone reminded to have a flu shot in the fall, when a pneumovax may be due, and there's also more detailed clinical reminders that can be written at the local level to say, this patient's a diabetic, he's over this certain age, his hemoglobin A1C is this, we're going to make sure he has a diabetic eye exam come up, things like that. And again, the intent of this is for a quick look for a provider to be able to see what might or might not be due. Recent lab results, we've had some challenges with the lab package, so that's not showing up right now. Vital signs will show the last set of vital signs that were entered into the system. Vital signs can be entered right from here. If we double-click on any of the entries, a separate screen will come up that has some of the data in there that was previously entered, and I'll just point out anything that's in red falls outside of the high and low parameters. But if I wanted to enter new vitals on this patient, I would click in the upper right-hand corner and click on Enter Vitals. And a dialog box would come up that I would just be able to enter the vital signs, excuse me, and tab through the various options. I don't have to do an entry for every vital sign that's there, and there's various qualifiers that I can change, maybe if the patient was lying down. And then I would just click on Save and Exit, and I would click the X to get out of this particular option. And you can see here, there's the pulse that I just entered and the blood pressure for September 22nd. So now I'm just going to move along, and I'm going to spend more time in some of the tabs than others. So the Problems tab, I'm just going to show the ability to, the default is active problems, but there are different viewing options over on the left-hand side. A new problem can be added. I would say most of the time a primary care provider is adding problems to the list as they interview and examine a patient. I will point out, as we move through the tabs, the menu bar at the top has, every tab has File, Edit, View, Action, Tools, and Help. But those options change as we move from tab to tab. So if we went to Action here, we could do a new problem, and there is the option to update care plans, although we won't be reviewing the care plans in this particular area. It's related to more to the problems. Now I'm going to move along to the Meds tab. And you can see here there's much more detail in this particular tab. If I went to the menu bar, and I just explained that it changes as you move from tab to tab, you can see the action items relate to medications. I might want to enter an order for a new medication, a hold order, renew an order, etc. So you can see here there's 3 different sections of the Medications tab. The inpatient medications, which are the ones that we previously saw on the cover sheet because the patient's an inpatient. And again, they show as pending. You can double-click to get the details of those. So the same functionality that we saw in the cover sheet, you can just do in more detail on the other tabs. The non-VA medications are, again, the VA software was set up for care in the VA, and the VA is a little unique in that we provide the outpatient medications. Our patients usually don't go to CVS to have their prescriptions filled. They get them filled when they go home right at the VA. The exception to that is there's certain medications that may be less expensive to get on the outside, or they may be, a patient may be taking some herbal medications that we want reflected in the record because the drug-drug and drug allergy interactions take place on all 3 of these areas, so to speak. And then the outpatient medications are those medications that a patient has prescriptions when they go home or in their care as an outpatient. So I'm going to just move along to the next tab, which is the Orders tab. And I think for, you know, nurses and physicians, this is really the core of the record. Folks always want to go into the Orders tab and see, you know, what's going on for this particular patient, what tasks do I need to do, you know, what is my, it helps formulate a day for a nurse or a physician or a respiratory therapist. You can see here, again, the default is active orders for all services. When orders are entered, it appears as though you're entering the orders into one particular record, but really you're entering into one particular package, but you're really entering those into various packages like the lab package, the radiology package, the dietetics package. So those orders go off to all those different services, but they all appear as active orders. You can see here that this particular patient has several orders written. Those that have two arrows in front of them indicate that they were free text orders. Someone just typed that information in. And then the same with nursing orders are pretty much text orders. You can see down at the bottom the inpatient medications. Those orders that are showing in blue are actually, I input those, but I do not have what's called the provider key. So I've input those for a physician, but they will not be activated till they're signed by that particular physician. So I just want to briefly show you how to add new orders. So I could add new orders and get like a generic screen up, or I could say I just want to order a medication and click on inpatient medications. I'm going to go to the Add Orders screen. Because I'm not listed in the system as a provider, the system is saying, okay, then who's the provider that will be signing these orders? So I'm going to just enter Dr. 8. And I'm going to tie it to the hospital admission. And what comes up is a screen that I can then order. It's based in the different packages, so I may want to enter an order for a weight on the patient. And it comes up with the start time is now, and the default time defaults to now. So I want the patient to have daily weights, so I went too fast on that. I apologize. If you want to change the date on anything, anytime that there's a little square that has 3 dots in it will bring up a calendar. So if I click on that, it brings up a calendar that defaults to today and the time that we're logged on. So for the stop date, I'm going to say I want the patient weighed for a week. So I clicked on September 29th. And clicked OK. And then I'm going to schedule the weights to be done twice a day. And I'll just include some special instructions. Please use. And I'm going to accept the order. And if I don't wish to write any other orders, I'll click on Done. And you can see here at the top all the information that I just entered, and it's an unsigned order. So it can be viewed by all users of the system, but that's why it shows up in blue, that it's unsigned and it's not technically an active order because it has not been released. I want to make sure that I'm covering everything with my notes here. Any question on the Orders tab? Have I completely lost everyone?
Nope, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Very clear.
Okay, great. One of the workflow-wise, I'm just going to provide some tidbits based on my experience. Workflow-wise, what we find a lot of the nurses like to do initially was to print out a copy of the orders maybe at the beginning of their shift, and they can do that just by highlighting. And again, I don't have a printer hooked up here, but I would highlight the orders and then go to File and say Print. Again, I think some nurses are a little more comfortable with knowing they have like a piece of paper until they really get used to checking for orders and looking in the system. Okay, so I'm going to move along, and I should probably tell you that all of these 3 unsigned orders, when Dr. 8 signs on to the system, they will get, he or she would get an alert saying, you've got 3 unsigned orders, and they would then be prompted to go and sign those orders to activate them. So all that communication does take place kind of behind the scenes. I'm going to just click on the Notes tab now. And I just want to share with you a few important points about progress notes, that any unsigned progress note can be edited by the author until they sign it. So you can see here I have an unsigned progress note that I could now go in and edit this note if I chose to. Some users will start a note at the beginning of their shift and then go in and edit that note until their shift is over, and then they would then sign the note at the end of their shift. Workflow-wise, I think that works pretty well. However, the drawback to that is if I leave and don't sign my progress note, no one else can see that progress note. So only a user can, the user who entered the note can view an unsigned progress note. So what I always tell folks is it's probably better to go in, write a little note, sign it, and then create an addendum to a particular note. So if I wanted to enter a brand new progress note now, in the lower left-hand corner, I would click on New Note. And you can see what comes up is what progress note title that we want to use for this. And I'm going to just type in General. And you can see it's a General Visit Progress Note. I think there's other titles that we may be able to add as we move forward. And you can see the date and the time of the note is a little strange. It defaults to the day the patient was admitted. So I'm going to share how to change that to today's date and time. Again, there's the 3 little dots in the box. I'm going to click on that. Oh, I have a consult that I put in. That will go away. So I'm going to change the date and time to today at 1500. A note is filed in the record in reverse chronologic order, so you want to make sure you actually reflect the correct date. So I'm going to say OK. And what comes up here is a blank box that I can type, this is a test. And then if I wanted to embed some information from a template that's in the computer into my note as I'm typing it, I would click in the lower left-hand corner on Templates. And then there's a box called Shared Templates that I'm just going to open up by clicking on the plus sign. And there's a template that's called Personal History. And I'm just going to click on that. And it brings up a template that is really probably not as robust as I'd like to see, but I would just click, and then there's the interesting thing about this is it serves as a reminder. A lot of times templates will serve as a reminder to say, oh, I need to make sure I ask this, or I need to gather information on this particular information. So I would just click as I move through this. I'd say no alcohol in the last year. I'm a current tobacco user. I'm not really, but say this. So again, you can move through, and any time in any of the templates that you see trying to find one here, no, an asterisk, it means if you open that particular section of a template and there's an asterisk, that's a mandatory field that has to be filled out in that particular section. So if I were done with this template, I would click on Finish. I would say that Dr. Ada is the primary provider for this encounter. And you can see that information was placed into the progress note, and then I would be able to type anything else. If I wanted to sign the progress note now, there's a couple ways I can do that. I could go under Action, and I could say Sign Note Now, or I could right-click in the body of the note, and I get those same action choices, and I would say Sign Note Now, and it asks for my signature code, which is the third code that you'll be provided. You'll get an access code, a verify code, and a signature code, an electronic signature code. And you can see now this particular note is signed. This note cannot be edited by me or anyone else. But now if I said, oh, I forgot to add something to this particular note and I want it to appear in this particular chronologic order, I can right-click or go to Action, and I would say I'd like to make an addendum to this note. The nice thing about making addendums is if you can make an addendum on anyone else's note because it really appears as a separate entry. It may say from nurse 1 that I turn the patient every 2 hours, and then I may come along and say, I noticed breakdown on the patient's left ankle. Oops. I don't type well under pressure, so please excuse me. And again, I would say, sign this note now. And you can see the addendum is now placed on top of my original document. Progress notes can be a little bit, confusing at first, but I think once students get a feel for typing things in, putting templates in, etc., I think they'll find it really easy. And you can see here that it appears in reverse chronologic order. This is the most recent note, and this is the oldest note that is in the system. When we were on the cover sheet, we looked at the clinical warning, and you can see here it does appear, and it does say that the patient has a history of MRSA and should be placed in a private room, which is the same clinical warning that appeared on the cover sheet. I'm just going to briefly touch upon consults. Consults is usually an area that a physician can order a consult, say a cardiology consult or a PT consult on a particular patient. That particular service receives that consult electronically, sees the patient, and then writes their note tied to the consult. The important takeaway with this is the results of the consult will be seen in the Consults tab, but also within the Progress Notes tab as well. So for most of the users that aren't actually doing consults, any pertinent information from the consults will be found in the Progress Notes tab. So there's very little need to actually go to the Consults tab unless you're a consulting service. So I'm going to move along to the Discharge Summary tab. And this is where physicians will dictate a comprehensive overview of a patient's stay in the hospital, and it's great information for if a patient's been admitted several different times, for staff to go in and see what happened in previous admissions. Did they develop skin breakdown? Do they have a history of falling? Did they have any complications from surgery? And that's usually found in this area. And again, in the VA system, this has been a very valuable area for people coming in and seeing patients for the first time. Now, I'm going to skip over the Labs tab because I am going to switch patients because we've had some challenges with the Labs tab with this particular patient. I'm going to click on the Reports tab. And the Reports tab is it's all read-only in this particular Reports tab. But basically what has happened, but what has been created are various reports that pull information from different parts of the system and into one report that can either be printed out for a patient or printed out for use in a clinic or something like that. What I'm going to do is the Medication Administration History BCMA, I'll just click on that. And this particular patient has no active medications because, again, his orders hadn't been looked at by pharmacy yet. But this is the history that's connected to the electronic med administration system that's used in the VA, but it also, had he had active orders, could be printed out for the administration of medications in a different clinical setting. It would list the medications, the times administered, and would allow whoever's administering the meds to document their initials on there. We're hopefully going to get some medication orders activated so you can see that. But I'd like to point out here that on this medication sheet lists all of this patient's allergies that have been entered into the system. I'm going to just click on the plus sign next to Health Summary. And one of the other reports that could be used is medication reconciliation. And again, the orders here are not as active or robust as they could be, but this is something that could be sent home with the patient saying, here's what you came in on, here's what you're going home on, and what the differences are. So again, there's all sorts of different reports that can be created. There's something called an ad hoc report that people can create what I call on the fly. So if I want all the patient's progress notes, their discharge summaries, there's all sorts of menu options here I can select from. If I want to know when the patient was admitted, I would click on that, pull it over that it's going to show in this report. I may want to have the patient's discharges. I'm just clicking, and then I would say okay. And it would list the last 10 admissions and discharges or 1 year. And I forgot this patient's been in for 3 years. But again, there's a lot of versatility with reports that can be developed on the fly. So I'm going to switch patients and just briefly show some of the lab information. It says I have an unsigned note. It's just not an unsigned note, an unsigned order before I switch patients. I'm going to select this particular patient and click on OK. And I'm going to go to the Labs tab. And what I'm just going to show here is the default view is the most recent labs that this patient has had in the system. And you can see this particular patient had a glucose on September 12th. The result was 415. It's flagged as high, and there's also a little asterisk next to that, meaning it's a critical value. It's critically high. And you can see here it shows the reference range for normal values. If I wanted to see the previous lab, the next recent one, I would just click on the previous arrow, and this has not been run yet, so I just keep clicking. And on September 12th at noon, this patient had a glucose of 285. I will show you the ability to graph these results as well. I'm going to click on graph, which is the 6th option down. So the system's asking me, okay, what do you want to graph? And I know there's glucose values in there, so I'm going to click on glucose. And you can see here what the glucose results are. And this red line indicates all of those were in one particular day. But if I clicked on one of them, it would show what the results were for that particular day. It's really a great option to be able to trend things like glucoses. You can also trend, excuse me, you can graph if a patient is on a certain medication and it's maybe been adjusted over time. You can graph, say, a glucose with their insulin or with their oral hypoglycemic medications and really see what's happened over time. So with that, I'm going to see if anyone has any questions about, I realize we only have 9 minutes left. If anyone has questions about what I've just covered within CPRS.
Pam, thank you so much. That was so clearly presented.
Oh, thank you.
Just a reminder to all the participants that if you would like to speak, you'll need to unmute your phone by clicking on the microphone icon next to your name. Any questions at all? Or our colleagues in Bellingham, I know you don't have a mic, so if you have questions you'd like to chat in, that would be great too.
Margaret, if there's no questions, oh, I see they say we're good, thanks. Would you like me just to sign on to flow sheets?
Sure.
Or do you want, it's up to you.
No, if that's, I think probably, Roger, you probably only need about 3 or 4 minutes to show the login process, right?
Yeah, it just takes a minute.
Yeah, so sure, Pam.
Oh, I want to see the flow sheets. Okay, so what I'm going to do is close out of the graphing option. I'm back to this particular patient's record, and I'm just going to click the X in the upper right-hand corner, and this will bring me back to the desktop. I'm going to just really briefly show the application called Clinical Flow Sheets or CP Flow Sheets. In the lower left-hand corner, it looks like a flow sheet. I'll log on with the same access and verify code that I've used for all the other applications. Now, while this is sort of warming up, I will tell you that the clinical flow sheets is similar to a paper flow sheet, and there is the ability to send a copy of that information into CPRS. You can't view this or enter information within CPRS. It is a separate logon and application. I'm going to choose this particular patient again, Mr. Adams, and open his flow sheet. This will be a really, really quick overview. I designed a really quick flow sheet just to sort of address some of the areas that were listed on the list that Margaret received from the various schools. You can see, here's our particular patient, and the flow sheet is called Training BC for Bellevue College, for lack of a more creative name that I came up with. But in the clinical setting, a facility or an organization may have 10 or 11 different flow sheets, depending upon the setting that the patient is in. So that's why there is a drop-down here to select a particular flow sheet. But you can see here the flow sheet that was designed is called ADLs. I have an intake, as I scroll down, an output, and a pain, and a skin assessment as well. Again, this is very flexible, and it's like plug and play. You can move things around, certainly. But I will just bring your attention to if we wanted to add information, say, to the ADL component, you just click on Add Data, and you can see what's included in the ADL section. I just have, you know, bath information, normal bowel sounds. They had one bowel movement. And again, I'm going very quickly through this, and I'm going to save that. And you can see here, the times are a little bit different here because the remote desktop times are a little strange here. But you can see the information that I just entered in this 4-hour interval shows up right here under ADLs. You can change the time. It defaults to a 4-hour block of time, but that can be changed as well. And then the intake and output section I think is really pretty cool because I just did a couple entries today, and you can see between 8 a.m. and noon, the patient had 200 cc's of PO intake, and at 1800 at 6 o'clock, they had another 525, and it does add it up. The same with the output as well. I should have pointed out that whenever data is added, there's a little notebook here where a comment can be added as well that would show up. Oh, I didn't put anything. Okay. And you can see the entry that I just made. I made a comment, and there's a little eye that you could click on to see what that comment was. If I wanted to include all of this data into a note in CPRS, I could do that. Right now it's defaulting to just today's data, which I could change. I could set a date range. I could go back another day, but just for timing, I'm just going to accept the default. And again, in your guides, you have all this information, but I'm just going to click on Reports, select the flow sheet. You can see the flow sheet here. And I would just say I was going to write a note. And again, this is so quick, I'm not doing it really justice. But in the pink area, it's going to show the data that's been entered in the flow sheet for this period of time, and then I can also add other text. This is going to be a progress note, so I'm going to enter my electronic signature code, click on Sign, and then I'll get a message saying that's in CPRS filed already. So I know there's only a minute left, so I did want to just show you flow sheets just to whet your appetite a little bit.
Great.
And with that, I'll call it a day.
Thank you very much, Pam. And our colleagues in Bellingham said, thank you so much for the overview. It looks great, and they had to leave the classroom they were in. So,
okay.
And with the one minute we have left, Roger, I'm going to switch the controls to you, and just very quickly, Roger can show you what your students will see, what you and your students will see when you log into VistA.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Roger. I'm the educational technologist here at Bellevue College. I'm just going to quickly show you how to log into the systems we're using. It's remote desktop protocol. Ooh. Yikes. Sorry. I'm trying to share here. Give me one moment. Share desktop. Another one. All right, are you all able to see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so you go to the Start menu, simply type Remote. Sorry, my computer's running a little slow right now. And it'll find Remote Desktop Connection. You go ahead and click on that. It'll open up this dialog. And I've already got the server loaded in here. This is the specific server that we're using to demonstrate right now. Go ahead and click Show Options. I'm logging in as student 3001A.
And you'll receive the URL in your login instructions.
As well as the username and password as well. So we've got that all set up. Go ahead and hit Connect. And it'll ask me for my password. I happen to have it right here. I'll just paste that in. We'll give you the password too. So it's just easier if you paste it in. You can hit Remember and it won't ask you again, or if you prefer to keep entering it, you can do that as well. So go ahead and hit Connect, hit OK. And it'll just take a second to secure the remote connection. And now you see a desktop similar to what Pam was demonstrating earlier. So the login process is really easy. The remote desktop protocol is really useful. So you don't have to worry about installing any applications or any sort of software or anything really. It's all built into the operating system. This works for Windows, Mac, Linux, anything, iPad. And you just use remote desktop protocol. We've got instructions for all of them. I'll be sending those out as well. And that's the process of logging on. It's pretty straightforward and simple. And if any of you do happen to ever run into any issues, you can always give us an email, a call. Just contact us and we can help you get it sorted out.
Okay, and thank you, Roger. And Pam, I know that you had recommended that people do not use those vitals and, oh, screen's gone. There were two things you recommended people don't use to add vitals because they should add them elsewhere.
That's right. I think to clean up the desktop a little bit, I would say you don't need to access the vitals at all because that's within CPRS. Scheduling you don't need.
All right. Well, terrific. Any final questions? All right. Well, thank you all so much for attending. And Pam Pickett, a huge thank you to you for the excellent demonstration.
Yeah,
thanks, Pam. It was my pleasure.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.